Subaru has just revealed 2022 WRX.
Ooh.
So, things have changed. It's different, and so we wanted to kind of talk through what our thoughts are about the new WRX, what it might mean for the STI, all that sort of thing. You can't see it, but behind the cameras here, we've got the TV with the little, basically the 4-minute video from Subaru queued up. So we're gonna hit play on that, and we'll give reactions, and we'll
Yay!
I don't know. So yeah, here we go. Let's just see.
Whoa.
Let's see what we got here. What do you think about the horsepower? So we just stopped it. It's 271 horsepower now.
3 more than last year.
3 more than last year, but 2.4 liter engine instead of the 2 liter engine.
I really want to see a dyno sheet on it. I want to see where that power is and how long it holds it.
Yeah. And I want to see the torque. I think it's 258 foot-pounds of torque.
So, and the Motor Trend video we just watched, he said these are preliminary numbers, and they have a feeling like it might grow. I mean...
It's hard to see Subaru announcing it so dramatically with these numbers and then saying, just kidding, it's more.
It's funny, we were all expecting it to be close to 300 horsepower. There were some rumors that it was going to be like 305, so like the new WRX was going to be the same horsepower as the outgoing STI, which it seemed like an un-Subaru thing to do. The positive part of that, if they did it, was that would really mean that there's a really, I mean, if the WRX is making 305 horsepower, they absolutely have to increase the power that the STI is making.
When the FA20 came out,
yeah,
that baseline dyno from Harvey, that made more than what they claimed, did it not? It made a ton of actual wheel horsepower.
Yeah, versus, like, actual numbers versus rated.
Right.
It was different.
But we were talking about how fucking ugly those fender flares are before we started talking about this.
The horsepower?
It's its own wilderness edition before they come out with it.
Right.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, I mean, and like you said, like the old two-tone Outbacks.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there was
in
something...
a gray, like that would look like one of those old Outbacks.
Yeah.
All day.
And, I mean, it's not bad with the...
No, it's bad.
It's not bad on the all-black one.
Okay.
Because you can't see
because it blends
right.
in.
That's why I like
blends
the black
in,
Honda element.
And you can actually see the lines of the car. You know, when it's all black, like that, it takes away from the lines of the fenders a little bit.
Yeah. And it really does look like the Crosstrek, the Outback.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it actually does not
stand out.
They did make the ducts functional though.
Did it? Yeah.
Finally, functional.
Oh, really?
The back of the wheel wells, those ducts are
that
functional.
actual holes.
The front fenders behind there's actual holes. That's a small step in a direction.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think with this engine, the torque is going to tell the story more than the horsepower number does. But seeing it's just such a small increase over the last year. So this engine, the 2.4 liter direct injected turbo, that's now in the Ascent, it's in the Outback. So they replaced the 3.6 liter 6-cylinder engine. So this new 2.4 liter makes more torque at 2,000 RPMs than the outgoing 3.6 liter 6-cylinder. Seeing, because we saw in the first teaser video that the red line is 6,000 RPMs just like the Ascent, my guess is this WRX engine is identical to the Ascent. But what I'm wondering is if in the STI, if they're going to put in a different cylinder heads, different cams, you know, get it back up to 65.
This probably has just a bigger turbo than what comes on the Ascent.
Could be even the same, because that is not far off from the Ascent.
I don't think
It's
it's
like 265, I think.
Oh.
I mean, like within a stone's throw. I mean, it could be exactly the same. But all right, let's talk about the turbo, electronically controlled wastegate. So they say that that's new for the WRX, so that's different than the Ascent. That could be a really big plus. I mean, it could flatten out the torque curve, could really make the horsepower number kind of.
Yeah.
But we're also getting ahead of ourselves.
Okay.
A little bit.
All right.
A little bit.
Now this interior. This interior, I was surprised to see the interior of the car. Because, like, Subaru usually is really behind the times. They are very slow to adopt any kind of new or improved technology. And now they've got this giant touchscreen that basically controls everything from, looks like the radio to the climate control.
But that's in all the other new cars.
Yeah.
Well,
The Outback, and I mean, it's in all those things.
But it's like the WRX didn't have anything like that. It had, like, even the new STI, I mean, it's got a little, like, what is it, a 4-inch screen?
Yeah.
5-inch screen, but it's just, it's not anything that you go like, okay, this looks like a current, like this technology level in the Subaru matches the current other technologies, which it usually doesn't, but now it does. I mean, that's,
Okay, yeah.
I mean,
I'll give them that.
pretty cool.
Yeah,
The rest of the interior looks pretty similar to the 15 up. 15
Yeah.
plus up.
yeah.
Yeah, I bet you that even though there's chassis stiffness improvements, I would wager that there's probably not a lot of dimensional changes to the interior. It's probably based on the same chassis. It doesn't look like they changed it.
They did say it's based on that new global whatever chassis, so
Right.
they did say that it is, it's wider and it's longer
It's longer than the current generation
by 2 inches,
by 2 inches.
and it's wider than the current generation.
So then the question will come in, is it, if it's longer by 2 inches, did they increase the wheelbase or not?
They did, by an inch. So that
Okay.
it's the global platforms, so whatever the hell that means, but I'm pretty sure that means that all of these cars are based on the exact same chassis.
I want to see a picture of this next to the Crosstrek then.
Yeah,
Because it would effectively have the same wheelbase, the same weight, same dimensions.
right, right.
And a wagon.
Well,
And everyone wants wagons still. I mean,
Yeah.
but that begs the question, can you take
of
the
course you
majority
can.
of this and,
Of course you can.
Swap
And that's
it
one of
over
the
to
first
Crosstrek.
things people are going to do.
yeah.
They're gonna try it.
Try it.
Absolutely. Starting in 2008, they started, I'm sorry, it's 2009, they started referring to the automatic WRX as the WRX GT. So this is not exactly new, but now they're calling this its own trim level. So they're calling this, maybe this version, they have the performance transmission, performance automatic transmission. Pretty much appears that it is confirmed that it is a CVT. It is not like an 8-speed automatic or anything else. It's not the dual clutch that we've been hoping and crossing our fingers for. 444 final drive, which is, it should make it feel a little bit zippier, which I don't know.
That's different from the last CVT they had, which was a 411.
But the blip shift, downshifting is really interesting. So it's CVT, it's got the paddles and blip downshifts, basically everything to make you feel like you've got a dual clutch transmission without actually having a dual clutch transmission.
So, and I mean, if they had to have upgraded it, because the CVT's been having transmission problems for forever.
They're going to mention
Yeah,
here in a
let's see.
second that it now has its own transmission cooler
Right.
to basically make it more reliable on track.
I mean, that's one of the things that like anyone with the CVT is trying to figure out how to retrofit an aftermarket cooler into these things.
Yeah. What this tells me is that Subaru is leaning into that large market segment, and if they're saying, well, if you really love the CVT or you really want the CVT WRX, we're going to give you the best possible CVT WRX that you could possibly want.
Yeah, it makes you wonder with all this effort going into mimicking a dual clutch with the blip downshift and
Yeah.
everything, like
Yeah.
how much more would it have really cost, like on the price tag, to have a dual clutch?
Well, the thing with the CVTs, it's infinitely variable, and so that's where you can get the efficiency. Like the 444 final drive, like
Which is neat. I like
yeah,
it.
a lot of times what that means is that you get worse fuel economy. You know, and the CVTs, one of the insane things about the CVT WRX is they got great mileage. I mean, a lot of people that commuted in their cars, daily drove their cars, put a lot of miles on them. When they got the new CVT WRXs, or they got the CVT WRXs because they were getting over 30 miles to the gallon. It's like super good gas mileage in these cars.
The CVT has the capacity to be really quick as well.
Yeah.
Like there's a reason it was banned in Formula One. Like you lose all the time of upshifting. It's
Yeah.
just continuously giving you the power. Like
And that's the funny thing to me about the blip shift is that there's
Yeah.
no
Right.
point in doing it because the car doesn't even have to do it.
it's
That's
a sensation.
it's just the sound and the feeling of it. That's it. There's actually no functional benefits
It's for
to it.
crackle tuners.
Yeah. Well, it's the crackle tune. So I mean, it's really interesting to see what they did with this GT, and like it's really kind of like, I think it's catering to the people that want the CVT WRX but want it to feel as sporty as possible, and they've now custom built that.
And
Wow.
it would be my option. I would try that over knowing that the 5.5 speed that's in there
Yeah.
Mm.
is it's still
I would too.
It's still a glass house. I mean, it really is. Like,
I mean, as a daily driver, like,
As
or
a
as
daily-
in a CVT,
I mean, it's-
you
even
take
as
it
a
to the
daily,
track
I get
once in a blue
Sure.
moon.
Yeah.
Even see what it does at a track, because I want to see about like how the electronically controlled dampers do.
I,
what that does.
I would actually
Yes.
like to test that out at the track, because if everything's track inspired, I mean, I would like to see exactly,
Alright.
you know, where they got that from.
It's clear that like if you have the performance transmission in the different modes, now you have the performance suspension in the different modes. And so like with this is changing the characteristics of the fluid in the dampeners. So you're gonna feel a much greater difference. You're really gonna be able to tune in how you want the suspension to feel with this more than like changing just the valving of your dampening with like an adjustable coilover or something. So I mean it really probably will change the characteristics of the car quite a bit, which is cool. I wonder if something like that, I mean if the WRX is getting it, I wonder if that's going to be in the STI.
It says a lot to me, or will say a lot to me when they release the STI. If it doesn't have it, it wasn't good enough to put on the STI.
Sure.
I wonder how much weight it adds, because it might actually add a decent amount of weight.
They say it's 3 pounds heavier than the old version, overall.
The
whole
suspension.
The whole car
car.
is 3
Oh.
pounds heavier.
Okay.
Way stiffer,
Wow.
3 pounds heavier, longer, wider, taller.
That's crazy. So they've definitely shaved a lot of weight somewhere else. I mean, it's interesting to have two different drive modes in a WRX.
Yeah.
Center
Or
differential
center
control.
Well,
it
It's got to be
gotta
just that.
But it's interesting that I mean, STI's had that forever,
Yeah.
but now it's trickling down into the
So they-
CVT WRX.
They are taking the GT trim a little more seriously, like track
Yeah,
suspension.
They really are.
And again, like if you want a CVT, if you don't really care about playing with the car power-wise, like
This would be solely for the GT though, right?
yeah,
correct.
it seems
Okay.
like
Yeah.
Okay.
But as far as we know, I mean,
Yeah.
At least the suspension option.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
But I mean, that's a good point. So they said performance transmission under the as we're in the GT part of the video.
Mhm.
So if it's a different, like if it's the performance CVT in the GT version, but if it's the standard CVT and the standard WRX.
So okay, manual WRX. Do they not get this control?
They don't
I
have the
assume not.
control of the all-wheel drive, I would assume.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be just the regular old.
So
Yeah.
just a viscous
Yeah.
center coupling.
Sad.
Well, I mean,
This is kind of pushing me more towards the GT over the standard.
Sure.
but again, like knowing that you couldn't really tinker with it.
Right.
But well, so
You're like a
here's
daily driver, but you still have
Yeah.
like a little bit of control.
the other question. All right, just generally speaking, do you like a lot of electronic gizmos like this, or do you not like a lot of electronic gizmos?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
You know,
So-
it depends on how it's done.
When they
Honestly,
work.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I like my bug eye because it feels very analog. And
It is
there's,
analog.
there's you
Yeah.
feel that, right?
Yeah.
It's not being hidden by anything at all. It's very direct. And then like driving my mom's Alfa Romeo,
Yeah.
holy cow, is it nice to have all those electronic aids
Oh, yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
Like it's a completely different driving experience, but in their own right, they're both really cool.
Yeah. So I have a BMW that has a lot of really cool electronic aids until they go on the fritz, and then it's
Right.
Yeah.
it's expensive and it's not simple to correct. And
And this is no longer something you can work on yourself. I mean, with the amount of
yeah.
No car ever was for me.
Well, well, my angel, you were born with two left hands. That's not your fault.
so I mean,
Yeah.
the electronics, CAN bus system. The CAN bus,
Oh, man.
everything is associated with CAN bus
So
now.
probably all of these systems.
Everything
are
is
all
going to
gonna
be
be
CAN
tied
bus.
together.
If one thing goes out, everything's going to go out.
Right.
Instant lead mother.
I wonder if like you can't put a coilover on. If you take the suspension off and you put a standard coilover on,
Yeah.
now it's going to put the suspension into limp mode, and that might take out the steering control. It might take out the eyesight. So advanced aerodynamics with a Subaru engineered surface. That's not good.
WRX GT.
Like shark skin.
Shark skin
Like shark
paint?
skin. Yeah. So that's as soon as I heard that was the thing that I thought of. So
I totally missed that part of it.
yeah. So and what I wonder is if that's why they left the body cladding plastic, because I bet you it's got that shark skin texture to it.
Maybe.
So what this is, when they run the STI around the Nürburgring, which is an endurance race, 24 hours, Subaru spent
Gods.
Wasn't over $1 million
Gods of
developing
money.
this shark skin paint for the car that basically made it more aerodynamic. And I think they said over the whole course of the race it saved them 1 pit stop.
Yeah. So like a golf ball.
Like,
Basically
yeah.
adding texture to the paint
Yeah.
to create a better air layer boundary,
Yeah.
make it more slippery.
And so that's what they say
That would make sense.
texture is.
Mhm.
With the whatever fender looking things.
But it's it's like if you were gonna lean into that, why wouldn't you put the shark skin paint on the whole car? I wonder too, I mean, if the aftermarket came out with like body color cladding that you could just snap on. I mean, that
Well, the
would
renders that we saw before this was released
Yeah.
had the shape of the plastic cladding,
Yeah.
but it was body color. And
Yeah.
I think all of us were like, well, it's not so bad.
Right.
My guess is that the STI, it's all gonna be one color. Alright, so as we've gone through the video, what do you think this means for the STI? No, I mean, there's no way to tell, but guess. Just what do you guess?
No way to tell.
Hopefully good things.
Yeah.
I think there's no way it's gonna have over 400.
Only way we
I-
can go from
I
here is
can't
up.
believe
Yeah, exactly.
I can't believe they would only change the WRX by 3 horsepower and then change the trim level of the next one by over 100.
I can see that.
Differentiate between the two, they need to.
They
Well,
need to.
Because
I
the
don't disagree.
I mean, the STI has always been, 5 steps above a WRX. The people that are
And-
like, I'm gonna save that money, I don't need the Brembos, I don't need this on the STI, I'm just gonna buy the WRX. And then they spend $25,000 converting their WRX into an STI.
Well, and STI, Subaru likes the STI being really differentiated from the WRX.
So,
But it hasn't always been that clear, right? Like,
No, it's always been clear.
I don't think so. I really don't think so. Because you look at an STI, like a GT chassis STI, you're like, okay, it's got a big wing, better suspension, bigger brakes, and
Well,
60 more horsepower.
2.5 liter engine versus 2 liter engine initially.
Yeah, but
And then when they put the 2.5 in the WRX, they really took the teeth out of it.
But
because
as
they
a
left the
daily-
same turbo.
as a daily driver, is it worth the difference?
So yeah, as a daily driver,
And
there's a
what's
difference, is there?
what's their market, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
so this brings me back to 2008. The 2008 WRX. Narrow body.
Yep. STI was wide body.
It was garbage. And then the 2008 STI in that wide body, it was vastly different.
Yeah, dramatic.
Dramatic. And I mean, still to this day, I look at those narrow body WRXs and it's just like, what? Why'd you just make an Impreza and put a turbo engine in it? It was horrible. So
Yeah.
let's hope that maybe there's going to be a dramatic change between this.
Yeah.
I think that there's absolutely the possibility still for a dramatic change, and you got to remember, so the WRX has taken now a lot of steps up, even since 2014 to 2015 when it got the direct injected engine. And remember, one of the things that people were upset about, the internet blew up about it, was the fact that the WRX was faster 0 to 60 than the STI at that point.
Sure.
Now putting the 2.4 liter engine in there, which is going to have more torque even, it's probably going to have a very flat power band. If they don't do something significant to the STI, that 0 to 60 time is going to be probably even more pronounced. Which is where, okay, now you've got to put the STI back on top. So now there's way more to all of that.
That's a really good point.
Than 0 to 60 times, but we're now seeing the 2022 WRX is getting another leg up. And look at the technology in this GT version, right? You got the paddle shifters. It sounds like you have, a sequential or a dual clutch transmission in the car. They're probably not going to bring out a dual clutch, but for crying out loud, now if you really want that experience of driving a sporty car, think about how many European cars like BMWs and Porsches have got these dual clutches.
So
Or the
you can,
Audis.
yeah, you can. So you
Now
do
you
this.
feel
You
like
can
that.
pretend
Yeah,
that you have it.
right. So
It's almost the same.
now
It's just a
yeah.
pretend.
But if you just want
Close
that
your eyes and
experience,
wish really hard and
Yeah.
That brings up my next point though. what this costs is going to impact everything.
Yeah.
Because if this costs a low enough amount that just pretending you have all these things is good enough,
If it still starts under 30,000.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man.
The GT version is going to be
35.
35.
But that's going to
Yeah.
pump the STI version up, which again means it needs to be dramatically different to
So
offset
that's
that
where the
price
power is, and honestly, like even if a dual clutch transmission added $5,000 to the cost of the car, like let's say they came out with a dual clutch option and it was a $50,000 STI. If it has a dual clutch transmission
I'm there.
and it was making 400 horsepower
I don't care, I'm there.
at $50,000, that would still be a huge value. And it's like I think Subaru's got to get away from worrying about
What's a Golf R cost?
It's like just a hair higher than an STI.
Yeah.
And then, so what is it, the Audi S3, that's still a 55.
55.
An S3 on the dyno, full emissions, 500 foot-pounds of torque, 500 horsepower.
Yeah.
And
It's,
Full emissions.
with full emissions.
it's probably just a reflash of the ECU. Like
And-
everything
And
else
like,
is stock.
you know, that's what how the
Yeah,
European
I mean, if Subaru doesn't do something to make it easy enough to compete with those cars, they're still gonna be way behind.
You know, if the STI is $45,000, $47,000, $48,000, and for 55, you can get a car that can do that. Like, at that point, what's, you know, in for a penny, in for a pound, why not just make a little bit of a stretch and get the RS3? Which I hate to say, they're amazing when they work, and
Yeah.
when things start to go haywire,
Yeah.
man, I mean,
And that's
Yeah.
what we could see with the GT, because it has a lot, it's leaning in that direction.
yeah,
So hopefully they've got,
that's my hesitation with really fancy
Well,
electronics.
and Subaru needs to keep up with the times.
yeah.
And I mean, this STI, hopefully their head isn't so far up their asses that they realize that they have to stay relevant.
On these roads.
One thing that I wonder as far as the STI is like a lot of other models like sport trims that Subaru is putting out, they're becoming very like off-road, like adventure oriented.
Wilderness
And
editions.
I
Wilderness
wonder if the STI is gonna run askew from that and be more sport styled, or if it will follow like
Seeing-
the WRX
So
style.
the body cladding on this,
That's- yeah.
that's what I'm counting.
Taller, more off-road.
What I really hope is, so they started out this whole 2022 WRX with its rally heritage,
Yeah.
and they didn't talk a single thing about the Isle of Man STI. They didn't talk a single thing about the 24-hour Nürburgring STI.
Or the GT300 BRs, which, I mean, is a different platform, but they're
But-
competing on the road.
Tarmac.
Tarmac.
It would be huge if they're like, and guess what? The WRX is for dirt. Whatever. But the STI, it needs to focus more on the tarmac style.
When we saw the body cladding, when we saw like the height of the center line of the wheels to where the
Right.
basically the running boards were on the car, and like you look at the wilderness editions, I mean that was my guess coming into this, is that the WRX was going to be taller, have more suspension travel, and it's going to be more tailored towards off-road. And now they're saying track tune suspension and all
But
this
it
sort of
was
stuff.
funny though, because the shot that they said, track tune suspension, it's full opposite lock on a dirt road.
Right.
Right.
Like,
Right.
it was still doing everything off-road.
Track
Right.
tune.
Yeah.
That's. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no way to know until we drive it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they're focusing really heavily on the rally heritage, but it's like there's so many people that are using the
I think that was
cars
just to create hype.
Huh?
That was just to create hype.
Could be.
Well, I mean,
Right.
at the same time though, like a daily driver, if they don't anticipate everybody taking this on a dirt road or on a track at all, as
I
far
think
as a
that's
daily
where
driver,
they're-
Which
just
is
get
which,
their car
which is what the
comfortable.
WRX is, right?
Yeah.
How many people are actually tracking their WRX? So Halka bought a WRX and he's just like, I really wish I would have bought an STI to do this.
Yeah.
And so like the STI really is damn near a track car right out of the box.
Way more capable on it, honestly.
You know, so I mean, let's just hope.
All right. Well,
That's what we
all right,
think.
That's what we think.
Yeah.
Hopefully, the STI is awesome with a dual clutch transmission. And yeah, now the waiting game once again continues. So thanks very much for watching. As always, stay tuned to Flatirons Tuning, and let us know what you think in the comments.